وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So tonight, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to aim to conclude Surat AlSaff. It's at page 552 of a Madani print of the Quran. And we arrived at ayah number 10, basically. So 10 and 11, we recited, but I didn't conclude or didn't complete the explanation of both. So I'll do that today, inshallah ta'ala. And then we'll read the last few verses of the surah, inshallah ta'ala. And we'll aim. I'm trying to think of how far we're going to get before Ramadan comes. I don't think we'll finish the juz' before Ramadan. I doubt it. Probably end of Taghabun. We'll have 2 surahs left before Ramadan actually comes by, but that's fine. Surat AlSaff, within this cluster of surahs from Al-Mujadala to Tahrim, these surahs that talk about the organizational aspects of Islamic law. It organizes for us our lives as Muslims with each other, as individuals, as groups, with the group, with people who are similar to us, different than us, with the country as citizens. And Surah AlSaff specifically is the social contract. It talks about what we owe the group and what actually is the agreement here in terms of our relationship with our ummah, our nation. And I like to make these small points here and there just to help people kind of wrap their heads around what's being said. Surah Al-Hashr is different than Surah Al-Saff. Your relationship with the people who live within your country or who are citizens like you is not the same as what your social contract is. It's not the same thing. Within a country, understanding who it is that is considered an equal citizen and what relationship you should be aiming to have with them, that's Hashr. Al-Saff is saying, okay, what do you owe? What is your relationship with the nation? Not your country, the nation as an Ummah Muhammad alayhi salatu, the group that you belong to. What is it that you owe them and what do they owe you back? How does that work? And that social contract has been for a very long time an extremely important piece of human history. Philosophers and sociologists have spent a very sizable amount of time discussing what it means to have a social contract. Because without that, we're nomads. Nomads. We walk the earth with basically no law to govern us and no way to figure out how to deal with the person across from us. If you think about it, mammals have different ways of functioning. Lions, they have a pride, right? They exist in pride. And if the stronger male takes over the pride, chokes out all the cubs, and then has its own, and it functions as a pride for as long as they can. Tigers, for example, live completely solo. They mate. The male leaves, the female raises the young ones on their own. And you have cattle or deers or similar to them. They work in herds, and they always have an alpha male amongst them that kind of keep them moving forward. Each group of mammals is a little bit different. So when we look at ourselves as human beings, how exactly do we need to function? Because of our level of intellect, because of the way that our ability to communicate, we can actually make a lot of different choices. We could do any of those things. Any of those examples are totally fine for us. We can exist in groups, we can exist solo, we can exist in small families and large families. We can do whatever we want, basically, because there's no real reason for us not to. Other creatures, there are reasons why they behave that way. They behave that way because that's the only way they can basically survive. That's what works for them. But for us, we can do almost anything at all. So since we have all these options, the question becomes, what is the correct one? How do you function? The Arab, they were nomads for the longest time. And when I say Arabs, it's a term that has a number of different groups within them. I'm not talking about the descendants of Ibrahim alayhi salam. No, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ismail, all those who came from Ismail alayhi salam, they had some degree of social contract, which is why Surah Al-Saff is here. But the Arab outside of that, no, they didn't. They functioned as they were functional Bedouins, meaning they they lived wherever the winds took them. Wherever the earth was greener, they would just move. Wherever there was no one claiming territory, right? And they existed in tribes. And tribes were just large families. That's all tribes were. Anyone outside of your tribe, outside of your family, is not welcome. Is suspicious. Is someone that you need most likely to neutralize, especially outside of your tribe. Someone coming into your tribe is suspicious. You leave. The whole issue has a lot of question marks around it in terms of how you deal with people. That's why, for example, when the Prophet ﷺ's son or brought for us the concept of Assalamu alaikum, it was a huge difference how people function. It was huge. Because if you're on your horse in the middle of the desert going somewhere, and some other dude's on his horse going in the opposite direction, you both freeze. You both freeze. You both, it's a step. You don't know what to do. You don't know what's going to happen. If I don't kill him, he'll kill me. If I don't neutralize him, he'll neutralize me. If I just go and act like I didn't see him, then he comes behind me, and then I have to spend the rest of my journey looking behind me from this some guy who saw me alone. So the whole thing is extremely difficult. Assalamu alaikum. You're saying I have peace from my side, peace from my side. You keep on going. This became one of the applications of this concept. Is saying instead of living with, okay, I meet you on the way, we're both going somewhere. We both have destination. Instead of killing each other or fighting to the death, maybe we just kind of pass each other by. But to you and I, think about this. How easy is it? And I say these things, please don't take them in the wrong way. I'm just trying to get you to look at, because we're used to life in a certain way. I'm trying to pull you out of what we have and get you to see that life could have been different, and it was different for a long time. That's why the importance of this type of surah is high. How easy is it for you to, and I guess this is a bad example because we just saw this a few years ago. But I mean, cars are big weapons, right? You're walking down the street. How easy is it for you to be killed, really, if you think about it? If you're walking down the street and cars are going back and forth, how easy is it for your life to end? Very easy. Like it's very easy that someone gets mow you over. And we, rahmatullah, ala al family, they got to see that. But that was an unfortunate aspect of our experience here. But I'm not saying it because of that. I'm saying in general that we go into a lot of situations as people where it's very easy for us. We're in jeopardy, right? We're in jeopardy. But the reason that we don't fear is because there's a social contract that we've all agreed to. There's something that we've all agreed to. It's very valuable. Imagine if people stop agreeing to that. That's basically what Armageddon looks like. That's what chaos is. And it happened. Forget if you ever read about the power loss of New York back in the 90s when it went out for a couple of hours. They looted everything. People looted everything. There was no electricity and no internet. They just looted everything. Anything you could get, you would just take a rock, slam it into a window of a shop, pick up what you can, and run. And I've seen stuff like that, by the way. Like in Syria during the uprising, things happen. Stuff like that happened for sure. The human being behaves in a certain way because of certain constricts that exist around them. You remove some of them, you'll be very surprised how human beings behave. You'll be very surprised and the reason I believe that we're at jeopardy from that, because we don't discuss the social contract. It becomes a norm that it's not questioned, discussed, or thought about. There's no contemplation or reflection about it. It's just is. You just grow up into the world, and this is how the world functions, so you do. But then at some point, if you find that there's really I don't know why no one's watching, or no one can hold me accountable, no one can catch me, you start wondering about doing something different. If you don't have faith, then at least the social contract that you have accepted should hold you back. Because the idea is, I can't live in a way where, or behave in a way where if everyone did the same thing, life wouldn't continue. Right? This is one of the basic ideas of social contract. One of the basic ideas. I can't behave in a way where if everyone else behaved in that same way, life would basically collapse, or the society would crumble. Right? So how do you define what those ways are? And how do you make sure the person, the average human being, recognizes that you can't behave in a way where you're giving yourself exceptions to rules, exceptions all the time? And how do you explain to an average human being that the reason that we all behave the way we behave is because of a social contract that we've agreed upon? We are unarmed. We are unarmed civilians sitting here. Correct? If I took you back to the Prophet ﷺ's time, you walked into the masjid, all of them were armed. All of them. They all had arms on them. Why? Because the social contract had not yet been established. And the Prophet ﷺ established it. But it took a while, obviously, for people to get used to certain things and be able, because people walk into the masjid, they had their swords. They had the other weapons on them. Why? Because you never knew. Maybe someone jumps you. If someone jumps you with a knife and you have nothing, you're dead. So this is how they thought about stuff. Now, our neighbors to the south still think that's a good idea, so people are armed. You're seeing around someone and they have a gun in their pocket. Look, either we all are armed or none of us are. It doesn't work. You can't have it. You can't have like it doesn't work both ways where someone's armed and someone isn't. I'm at disadvantage. How do I? He has a gun. If he pulls it out and he goes like this, I'm dead. Right? I can't. For me to depend on the social contract is actually it's very futile if it's not being discussed, and it's not being discussed, which is why I think Surat AlSaff is a gem. And all of them, all the surahs of the Quran are. But I think it's really important because we have to remind ourselves of what the agreement is. There's an agreement here. We went through these things. لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. You have to commit fully. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِهِ صَفًّا. You have to see yourself equal. You have to stand in line like everyone else. You have to have a full comprehension of equality to everyone around you, and contribution that is not just your status is equal, but your contribution has to be equal too. You can't sit around while others contribute and you just reap and take the fruits. The problem if you have a population where 20% are working and the rest are sitting there just taking in wealth, and that's a big problem. You have to see yourself as an equal in terms of status and an equal in terms of contribution. The concept of which is the name of the Saf. The surah is called AlSaff because that word, standing in line, it gives you those two concepts. That you're equal in terms of your value and you're also equal in terms of the expectations of your contribution. And that's the main aspect of the social contract. The concept of no harm. You do no harm, which is لِمَ تُؤْذُونَنِي وَقَدْ تَعْلَمُونَ. The concept of the continuity. That you have to make sure that what you have is going to be handed down. That you're looking to the next generation to make sure that they're capable of carrying what it is that you have, that you took down, that you were handed down from your ancestors or your predecessors. This has to be a part of it. And then the other thing is you have to accept the law as it is. وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ افترى على الله الكذب وهو يدعى إلى الإسلام. You can't make things up about the law as you go along. This is the law. You accept it as it is. You may like it, you may not like it. It doesn't matter. You have to accept. You can't change it. If we all go around interpreting the law ala kayfna, things don't work based on our own understanding of things. This is how I want to interpret it. Wallah. You can't go around saying, this is my interpretation of the Canadian law. I make up my own. No, this is the law. You just follow the law. Unless you're a Supreme Court judge, then you don't interpret anything. You just follow the law as it's explained. We're all going to interpret it differently, then there's no way for us to be able. We can't even get through a street light. This happens all over the world, by the way. If you come from a third world country, this is all. Street lights are just suggestion. Green and red, it's just a suggestion. Just maybe if you want to. No, it's okay. Go, please, by all. You're driving in a lane. It's a one way, and another car is coming. No problem. You have to be awake and move, and it's fine. There's a lack of accountability to following a law. It's all over the world. People don't live too happy there. Safety levels are very much lower than they are here today. The life expectancy is worse. Honestly, life is not that great. The reason that the West made it far is because they actually spent a long time taking off the work, ripping off the work of Ibn Khaldun and those in Ibn Rushd, and coming up with a well-defined social contract, and then taking it and turning it into law, and turning it into qanun. And because they did that, things worked out. Because they were able to actually get the first generation that lived here and understand the importance of a social contract. That we all do our part. We all wait for our turn. We don't. The all stop thing. I till this day find it fascinating that it works here. I am fascinated by it. Wallahi. Like when I stop and someone else stops and we see who stopped first and then I go, then he goes. And I am fascinated by it. Like it's the best part of my day. I'm like, subhanallah. Because if I had lived in Arab countries and I would imagine the all stop signs and what nothing. It's not even there. They would run over the sign to make sure that because it's bothersome of looking at it and then keep on going. What's the difference? Now, the people who are doing that are not inferior. I want to make this clear. What I'm saying is I'm not actually saying, no, these are good people. And they probably have, it's just there's a lack of a social contract. They don't understand, like there's no agreement on everyone doing this because there's a lot of dhulm, a lot of oppression. There's too much oppression going on, which is why there's a problem. Which is why these surahs, it was why it's called the Saf. There has to be quality. We can't be people standing in a line. I'm here and someone else is way up front. The law does not apply to them. If that's the case, then I'm not going to follow anything anymore. You have to be a saff. Everyone has to be standing equally, being held accountable equally, contributing equally, treated equally. And then it works. That's why it's called a saff, because it's the most important piece. If you oppress people, you have a two-tier citizenship. If you have some people who can get away with anything. Now, what happens here, by the way, is just well concealed. Alhamdulillah. Like, we just don't see it. Like, the people who are ripping us all off, they're just doing it far away from us, so we can't see it, so we don't know about it, or we don't pay attention, so we don't have that much of a problem. In the Middle East, it's in your face, meaning someone who has a specific type of license plate does not stop at signs, does not listen to the police, and drives however they want to drive, because that license plate means they are part of this group and they can do whatever they want. But you and I have to actually wait our turn, right? So it's up in your face. When it's in your face like that, people are less likely to actually follow the law. Here, it doesn't happen that way. No, if you're in a place of position, you have to actually, if you have a position, some position of some sort, political position or any status, then once you're on the ground with people, you have to actually follow the law more, or you'll be ridiculed for it and you'll lose your status. But you continue to rip people off financially from the back doors for as much as you want, and people continue to suffer on other levels. I think this is better, obviously, for sure. I prefer this than that. But the problem in both scenarios, the lack of clarity of what a social contract is, which is what this means. Meaning, and there are books written about this, and I'm not trying to bore you with this, but I really think it's worth your time in your life, at least once or twice, to go and look into this a little bit. Just look into it, read the history of it, just understand it a little bit more, because it's very, very interesting. People have written books about groups, for example, ending up on an island, on a secluded island, like Lord of the Flies. And there's a lot of books that are written about, in all languages, by the way. There's Persian books and Arab books and Indian books written about ideas of if a group of people ended up on an island, right? An island, there's nothing around them. Plane crashed, everyone died, maybe 15, 20 people ended up on an island. So what do they do? How do they organize? The Islam is a social contract. Islam, if all Muslims, is a social contract, we'd know what to do. We would have an idea. Because Islam came and gave us a little bit of an idea, of an understanding of what that looks like. But if you think about it, if they're all from all over the place, there's a feeling right off the bat from everyone there that we need to gather up and figure out how to live. But maybe someone doesn't want to. Maybe someone's like, no, you guys are on your, I'm on my own, you're on your own, I'm doing my own thing. And even then you'll be like, well, no, we need to figure out how is this good? That's a social contract. We have to sit down and agree. If there are resources, how we're going to use them. If it comes to any danger, if it comes to what do we do? Someone is in pain and do we help them or do we throw them off a cliff? Because they're going to take too much time and we have no medication. Honestly, not every group will come to the same conclusion, by the way, regardless. This is why Surat AlSaff is important. It talks about these ideas, I think, worth taking. So he gave us the contracts of pound, ayah number 10 and 11. Said, Ya الذين آمنوا هل أدلكم على تجارة تنجيكم من عذاب أليم. Oh, those who believe, how would I give you a contract that will save you, first of all, from a painful punishment? Now you should understand why. Because the moment you don't have a social contract, oppression is going to be what happens. What happens out that is oppression. So you need to buy into this. This is the deal that you're going to sign. You're doing this so that you save yourself from punishment. Because if you don't, then the outcome is going to be oppression, and that's going to cause everyone to be punished. Because the outcome is going to be that the weak are going to get nothing. We call that the law of the jungle. I always wondered, this really is. What jungle do you mean? You actually think that this is our law. It's how we're living. We're living where the weak are trampled upon, where the weak get the least support, where the weak are the least important, where the vulnerable and poor and underserviced, and the only value they have is just around election time if they're capable of voting. And outside of that, no one really cares. There's no one. You don't get high publicity from going and servicing the slums of any city. No one. Doesn't get you any vote. No one cares about that. That's why we live in a part of the world where, technically speaking, there should be no houselessness. There should be no people walking around with no place to sleep at night, regardless of what they've done and the choices they've made in their lives. But we do. We have it all the time. Technically speaking, we have enough. The resources in these countries are way more than enough for it. Make sure everyone has a place to sleep at, enough food, stay warm. But there's something called. So, what is the two elements that we owe? The first one, Islamic, and this is the Islamic social contract. This is the Islamic. There's a lot of other ones. You have one here in Canada that we've all agreed to, which is why we follow the law. The Islamic one is two things. تؤمنون بالله ورسوله وتجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالكم. Two things is what you owe the nation that you're part of. Number one, obviously after he talked about the points that I made for you in terms of the pillars of the social contract, what you owe is that you accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning you're a part of the group. You entered the group in terms of your belief system and your theology, what it is that you stand for. And number two, you strive with all that you've got for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You give your wealth and you give yourself. You give yourself and what you owe, what you own, what you have, which is everything basically about you. You strive using all of it for the sake of Allah. This is the social contract. Very severe. It's extreme. It really is. I don't think Muslims understand. I really don't. I think we understand, but we don't. This is what he's asking you for. Full certainty in terms of your consciousness and subconsciousness when it comes to your belief system. Those iman billahi wa rasulihi, that internalization of faith and of comprehension. And then you strive with all you've got. Jihad is striving, not fighting. تقاتلوا. If he wanted to use fighting, he would have said تقاتلون, because the Quran is filled with قاتلوا. It's there. The term is there and it's used in abundance. So it's not like the Quran shies away from it when needed. He's talking about striving here. Meaning you put your effort. You see where contribution needs to be given and you do it. You see an emptiness, you see a gap, you see a problem, a deficit, something that requires your support or your attention, and then you strive for the sake of Allah with yourself and with your wealth, with all that you've got for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Understanding that you take care of yourself first. Like nowhere in this contract are you being told to starve yourself or walk around with nothing. You are obligated to keep yourself alive and keep your family alive. But aside from that, you strive with all that you've got for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything less than that you're not fulfilling your part of the deal. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكُمْ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. That's actually the best thing for you, if you knew. I think now we know. In kuntum ta'lamun, only if you knew or if you had the ability to understand or had the knowledge. And I think we do now. We understand that, yes, this is the best thing for us. If we all did that, then, you see, if we're all, I'll give you an example. If there's food and we're all trying to get there first to eat, it's not a very nice situation. But if we're all going there with the intention of serving the next person, then it's very easy. Everyone will eat and everyone will get more than what they need. So if everyone's walking in trying to snatch something for themselves, it's going to end ugly. And if everyone goes in with the intention of filling up a plate and giving someone else, then everyone is going to eat and everyone's going to eat well. But you require a shift of mentality. You have to have a different understanding of what you are required to do, what your role is in terms of this deal that you're being given. So it's good for you anyway. This deal is very good. It's beneficial because the first thing you think about when you hear the word deal is this a ripoff? Right? You're always standing there when you're getting a deal. You're wondering, is this a good deal or is this a complete ripoff? And I don't know enough about the stock, or I don't know enough about I don't know what I'm doing. And it says 60% off, but how do I know I don't know what the 100% was to begin with. Most places just, write more than what they had last month and write 80%. Who knows? Who's holding them accountable? I don't know if maybe there is there's some governmental body that's supposed to look at these things. I don't know. I don't know if this is a ripoff or not. I don't know if this stock is actually garbage and they want to get rid of it because it doesn't work anymore. I don't know. They're always scared it's a ripoff. So he's telling you, by the way, this deal, you offer these two things, not a ripoff. It's khayrun lakum. It's good for you. It's the best thing for you. It's the best deal you ever get. This is the deal the mother of all deals. This is the best deal. Just sign your piece. Amin billahi wa rasuli, accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet, and then strive for the rest of your life, yourself, what you have, whatever skills you're given, with your wealth, all that you own, for the sake of Allah, to the best of your ability. What you get in return. We didn't read that part, so we'll read that part, inshallah ta'ala. Because no deal is complete until the other piece is explained. It's not really a deal if you're just being asked to do something for free. So let's recite the verse after. We'll recite, inshallah, till the end of the page, and then I'll kind of explain what's left of it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يغفر لكم ذنوبكم ويدخلكم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار. So watch out that the ra is sakin. يغفر لكم. Do not shove the ra into the lam. So it's not يغفر لكم. No, it doesn't work out. It works the other way around. If you have a lam that is sakin with a ra that is not after it, the lam can go into the ra. It's called idgham al-mutaqaribin. It happens a lot in the Quran. So if you remember, if you كلا بل ران على قلوبهم, right, in Surat al-Mutaffifin. Now there's a within our recitation there's a narration where you don't stop there. So if you were to put it together, you say كلا بل ران. The lam is completely gone. It's shoved into the ra. You basically fuse it into the ra, and only the ra is left. It doesn't work the other way around. The ra is never fused into the lam. This is a very common mistake I hear. يغفر, no, يغفر, يغفر لكم. It requires you to take a little bit of a pause to make sure the ra comes out and the lam comes out. This is one of the mistakes that when they make it in Taraweeh, even I cringe. I cringe when that's made. I always like want to slap the imam on the head. It's one of those, because it's a known, the ra is never fused into the lam ever. Your tongue wants to do it because sometimes your tongue finds it easier, especially for English speaking people, because the r we have is a little bit different than the actual ra in Arabic. So we have a little bit of a modified way of doing it. So sometimes it feels better, but it's not. يغفر لكم. And you have to make sure that you complete. Same thing. ويدخلكم. The lam has sukoon on it. So why does it have two sukoons? Why is it sukoon? Because the verb here is majzoom. Why is it majzoom? In Arabic, there's something called jawab al-talab. Jawab al-talab, the answer for the request, which means if I say udrus tanjah, is sukoon on the ha. If I say study, you'll pass. Right? Study, you'll pass. So in this ayat that we're reciting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا هل أدلكم على تجارة تنجيكم من عذاب أليم تؤمنون بالله. The equivalent of these two verses is a command of believe and jahid. What happens if I do? يغفر لكم ذنوبكم. So it's majzoom because of that. It's a very, I shouldn't have brought this up, Yani, but it's a very interesting linguistic complex in Arabic even. Because jawab al-talab, for this to work, for you to have a fi'l mudari' that is going to be majzoom with a sukoon on it, the first one has to be a command. Udrus, study, tanjah. You'll pass. Here, there's really no command. He says, هل أدلكم على. He asks you the question, do you want me to give you a deal that will save you? And the deal is تؤمنون وتجاهدون, and that's actually very good for you. So as if he's saying, you said, yes, tell me about that deal that has these two things. So he said, آمنوا and جاهدوا يغفر لكم يدخلكم. So there's two things that are missing here. Because he's asking, هل أدلكم, want me to tell you? And it's as if what's missing is you saying, yes, I want to hear about this. And then he tells you, okay, here's the deal. آمن جاهد. Do these two things. آمن جاهد يغفر لكم يدخلكم. Then you get those two things in return. Forgive me if that was boring for you, but I had to do it. I couldn't help myself. All right. It's very interesting for people who are interested in a little bit of Arabic grammar. It's actually very, very interesting. It's very rare that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put into a sentence two levels of deleted dialect. Two levels of deleted pieces of conversation that are understood just by putting a sukoon on one letter. That's very impressive. He didn't have to say it that way, and then this would be completely a waste of your time. But he put the sukoon, forcing me to understand it the way I just explained it to you. That it's only three, the words are much less, but because he put it that way, he's actually telling you, and there's a few pieces here that are understood, they're implied, even though they're not being said. where you're going to say yes, and then I'm going to tell you Amin billahi wa rasulihi wa jahid fi sabilillahi bimalika wa nafsik yaghfir lakum dhunubakum. Just by putting a sukoon on the first, all of that is applied. So tell me that's not impressive in a language that you can do that. وَمَسَاكِنَ طَيِّبَةً فِي جَنَّاتِ عَدْنٍ. ذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. وَأُخْرَى تُحِبُّونَهَا نَصْرٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَفَتْحٌ قَرِيبٌ وَبَشِّرِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Okay, let me do these two first. So the answer, just so I don't lose the train of thought here. What you get in return, you'll forgive your shortcomings. Meaning you will not do this perfectly. Up front, you're being told this is the deal. You're required to believe and strive with all that you've got, and you will not succeed. You will fail. Like, you will try to do your best, and you won't reach your best. You will not do the best you can. There will be a lot of shortcomings. And because they're going to be there, as long as you tried your best, as you put in as much as you could, He's going to forgive. يَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ. Your sins and shortcomings will be forgiven. That's a big deal for us. Because as human beings, we don't have the ability to commit to something and actually see it through till the end without mistake or error. Or some degree of lack or distraction or deviation. It's in our nature that we run through phases in life, and we peak and we also hit rock bottoms. And we peak and we hit bottoms. We move because we don't have the ability to always be consistent with everything. But as long as we're trying to do these two things as much as we can, we know up front He's telling us, you will be forgiven. Like your dhunub, I will forgive. He will forgive your shortcomings and your sins. Number two, yudkhilkum jannat, and He will have you will enter you into gardens, tajri min tahtiha al-anhar. And as I explained this a number of times, when He says with rivers running under them, that all that means is that they're self-sufficient. That the water is going to be coming from your land. You're not dependent on someone else. This is why it's there. Just in case you're always wondering why in the Quran, tajri min tahtiha al-anhar, tajri min tahtiha al-anhar. What's the point? Why does a river have to run under? Because if you don't have a source of water for the land that He's going to give you in Jannah, the place that you live, that means you're dependent on some other source. And that's not full na'im. And that's not a full level of enjoyment or of pleasure. It's not, because there's something missing, because you are dependent on someone else. As long as you're dependent on someone else, there's something missing in your life. Because you don't feel that independence, you don't have that strength. So He's telling you in Jannah, when you're there, you'll be living in wherever in designated area, and under your land, the rivers will flow. So you depend on no one. The well is in your property. It's not in Fulan's property. They can cut it off sometime. This is the concept here, that psychologically you are not worried about something not coming through. See, we don't think about that here. We don't. They're big deals. We don't think. We just turn the faucet up and water comes down. You should take your kids to a place where they do that and nothing comes down. And then they go up to the roof to look at the khazan, the big thing, and there's no water in that either. And then they have to go and find out why no water is coming through the pipes, and they have to find out that water doesn't just come from the faucet, right? Just like eggs don't come from Walmart superstore. There's a place these things come from. We've lost that concept of sourcing. We don't know how things happen anymore. It's because we have a good social contract here, but we're losing awareness of it, which is what I'm trying to. Is the horn that I'm blowing, and the alarm that I'm sounding, that we're losing our understanding of what the social contract is. I know that because I watched what people did during COVID. Because you watched the behavior of people during COVID regarding toilet paper, not regarding khubz or milk or water, regarding toilet paper, which we as Muslims think is useless to begin with. As Muslims, we think it's a useless utility and appliance to begin with, and people were literally fighting over it. And there's this thing. Why? Because the social contract we have right now is weak. It's there as a law, but it's no longer a contract. I'm trying to differentiate for you that we turned it into a law, which is great, but it has to still be there as a social contract where you feel that you contribute equally and that you're responsible. Without that piece, the law is going to fail. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time before it actually falls again. Like you go back to chaos, and you go back to how it was before. Which is why we have to talk about this more in this country and around the world. Actually, I think people in the Middle East have more of an understanding of a social contract than we do, because their lands are a little bit more lawless. So a lot of what happens is based on people's understandings of one another, rather than a law that is dictating something. You'll be surprised that they have a higher social contract IQ than we do here, because there's a certain understanding of how things work. The law, because there's not a lot of law doesn't occur that much. I mean, law does not have a stronghold on how people live and behave. Something else does. It's how people work things out. It's not perfect. It's not bad, but they have a better understanding, so they actually are more equipped to do this correctly later. We are losing that piece. It's law that holds on to us, and soon, if that fails for some reason, then we're going to be in big trouble because we don't understand our social contracts anymore. وَمَسَاكِنَ طَيِّبَةً, and beautiful masakin, or homes or places of living, طَيِّبَة, that are beautified, that are splendid, that are fantastic, that are enjoyable. وَمَسَاكِنَ طَيِّبَةً. So he will have you enter you into a Jannah where the rivers run under the lands, so there's all self-sufficient, and he'll put you in homes that are splendid and beautified. في جنات عدن, in the gardens of eternity. Aden, which is Eden as they translate it into English, it's a Hebrew word in its origins, and it means eternity or prosperity. My name comes from it, and my name is a derivative of it. You just add an alif nun at the end of it, which is where the name comes from. But Aden means that eternity or prosperity. في جنات عدن, in the gardens of eternity and prosperity. ذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. And indeed, that is the ultimate win. Again, he's telling you, by the way, this is a winning deal for you. It's a winning deal. You offer me your belief, your understanding, your commitment. You offer me your striving with all that you got, and you will have your sins forgiven, and you'll be entered into a place that is self-sufficient, that is beautified for you, and that is eternal. That's it. It's more than enough, but that's not it. Even though it's more than enough, that as a deal, that's more than enough. قال وأخرى تحبونها. And other things that you like a lot, تحبونها, that you love, and you get in return also other things that you love. نصر من الله. You will get victory and success from Allah. وفتح قريب, and openings that will lead to even more prosperity in dunya. And he's pointing out to dunya. The deal, the contract, is based on akhirah. That's how the deal works. That's how the equation functions. Akhirah. If there's no akhirah, no social contract will work. Human beings have tried. It doesn't work. You have to have a concept of eternal or divine accountability. If it works for a very short period of time, then it fails later on. Because you need that piece. You need that divine accountability is required. So it's based on divine reward, something you get fil akhirah. But then he adds a piece, subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like, here, I'll throw this in for you. I'm going to throw in for you something you like. You will get success from Allah. Nasrun min Allah. وَفَتْحٌ قَرِيبٌ, and a close opening. Meaning a fath is a victory that leads to other victory. Meaning it's a fath, it's an opening. Meaning it's something that is good for you, that will open up options for more good things. It's not just a dead end win. No, this is something that will open doors for you. So you will get success, and you will get victories that will open more options for you. وَبَشِّرِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and give the believers who accept this that good news, that will come their way. That will come their way. This Surat AlSaff was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ before the Battle of Khandaq, before Ahzab. So before the literally the worst and lowest time that the Muslims ever saw. It happened before it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them, by the way, you will get that. Because it's inevitable. If a community functions this way, if the community لا يقولون إلا ما يفعلون, when they commit, they don't lie about stuff, they're not mediocre, they don't half contribute. If they understand the concept of saffan, meaning they are equal in value, equal in contribution and participation. If they understand lima tu'thuna, they don't cause harm to those around them. They refuse harm coming from them or coming to them. If they understand the idea, مُبَشِّرًا بِرَسُولٍ يَأْتِي مِنْ بَعْدِ اسْمُهُ أَحْمَدُ, the continuity of the legacy, meaning making sure that you take care of the next generation just like you take care of yourself. You have to make sure that they are going to get a future that is similar to your present, if not better than that. Understanding that when you accept it, when you accept the law, you accept it as it is. You don't change it and interpret it in a way that suits you or suits your agenda. That's what he explained in Surat AlSaff. If we do all that, any community that does that is going to be fine. Even if they're weak, outnumbered, lack wealth, lack basic resources. Isn't that exactly what the Arabs were like? Have you ever looked at a map that gives you the degrees of greenness of the land itself? When you look at the Middle East, look at Mecca and Medina, and then zoom in any green spots you can see from a map that kind of it's a desert. They had nothing. This is a nation. The Prophet ﷺ built a nation from nothing but an idea. That's it. He did not have a lot of money. He did not have many high numbers. Arabs have never been high in numbers more than other nations. No other nations always outnumber them. They still outnumber them today. He did not have a lucrative land that offered a lot of water and a lot of green, so they had a lot of crops. They did not have excess amount of livestock they could sell. There were no resources. At that time, mining was not a thing, so they weren't picking up. They did not know they were sitting on literally the biggest bed of oil that has ever existed on the planet. They had no idea it was under them. So there's wisdom in that. We'll talk about it in a different study. But this is how did he go from how did the Muslims rule the world in 30 years from the day he died, Ali? So how did that happen? Because it's the strength of the idea, the strength of the social contract that came with it. You accepted Islam. You became a part of a group who knew exactly what you owed the group. You knew exactly what that group owed you, and you functioned within that capacity. And you felt equal, and you contributed, and you were, and that's very meaningful. We don't all feel that way anymore, and we've accepted it, and we've normalized. Especially for as Muslims living in the West, because we come from such bad backgrounds where you know you're inferior, where you know that you have no worth at all and no value, whatever you do, that you could easily be taken and made to disappear immediately and never come back again. We are happy just to have a car and a house and running water and a bit of electricity. We've accepted that, the fact that we are not, our opinions aren't equal. We've accepted it. But let me tell you that's not healthy. That there's something, there's an effect of having that in your soul, in your heart. We are actually even scared to dare to dream to be treated as equals in this world. I'm telling you, we are scared to even dream to do it. We actually find Muslims who do that to be arrogant. We actually look at Muslims who walk around feeling that they are equal to everyone else, that they have every right to be who they want to be and behave the way they want to behave. We see them as arrogant because we, in our hearts, are too scared to even dream of that. Where there's no reason for us to hold back our opinion or hold back our identity or change or be anything. We don't understand it. I want you to take time and think about this, because most of us go through life not even realizing that's the case. Most of us live life don't even realize that this is actually how we feel, because it just became so much of a. It was been normalized. We've normalized this in our own life. But that's the promise. وَأُخْرَى تُحِبُّونَ, along with the divine reward. That's something you like as well. I'll give you something you love. That nasr, that you hope, that victory, success, those openings that are not far down the road, but close by, that are near. وَبَشِّرِ, I love that. And give the believers the good news. Tell them. Give them that dose of optimism that it'll happen. It'll come. Just stick to it. Just do this, and you'll see how it'll work. But it requires you to be fully. You have to buy in. تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, full buy-in, and then you strive with all you got. So it's not that selfishness is. Yeah, you have to take that coat off and hang it up. You have to hang it, and then you have to be someone who just gives all they got, understanding the concepts that we explained at the beginning of the surah as well. Wouldn't it be nice if it will come, inshallah. Inshallah, we're able to. All it takes is one generation, honestly. maybe 4 or 5% of them understanding this. The rest will all get in line. Most people just they want a reason. They want something to strive to aspire to. Most people are living life just hoping for something that they can belong to or something they can change into. They just need that piece. Yeah. 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 For sure. Yeah. So the first piece, I'm not sure what else I can add to that. We have to maybe get a bit more of an understanding from you. But the second piece, I think, is yeah, equality here is not equality in terms of your accomplishment. It's equality in terms of innate value. In terms of innate value, as a person, your survival is not more important than another person's survival. Even if you're multi PhD, multi-million dollar business running, even if you're someone, your survival in life is not more important than someone else. Your needs, desires, and fears are not less important than someone else. And this is where we end up in positions where we have that multi-layered societies. In the West, and it's all over the world. And it's been a part of human history forever. But we claim here, like at least we try to claim that no, that's not the case. We're all the same. But we're not. We're not. We're really not. We're not the same. We don't have that equality in terms of my value here, my confidence as a human being, my belonging to this group, the importance of my opinion to this group and my contribution is not based on merit. There's something else that is based on as well. It's based on a criteria that is not necessarily fair. Technically speaking, if you're going to be given more room to express your opinion, that should be based on your merit, meaning on what it is that you have done that puts you in a position that allows you to express more. It should not be based on wealth, which is what it's based on today. People who get to express more are people who can pay more. People who have more money to actually put it forward so they can buy their way, get their way, because in order to run a political campaign, you need millions of dollars to do it. So when you're sitting there in the House of Commons or you're sitting there in Parliament or wherever you are talking about things, it's not your merit that got you there. It's a lot of other stuff that put you in that position. Other people in your same country actually have more merit than you, have more experience and expertise and wisdom. They have more skill sets regarding the specific position you're in than you do, but they're not in that position because of a criteria that is not clear. And that's what I mean by equality. If it was equal, if it was corrective, if equity was a part of this, because equity is maybe a better word for this in certain contexts, then that would be the case. Then the right person would actually find themselves in the right position because we are all being looked at equally and treated equally, and we have equal opportunity as well. And that piece does not exist. It's money that speaks, and money is not always. It's not a good. Obviously, we all agree to that, but it is how the world basically functions. Now, the first piece you brought up, I'm not sure I understood exactly what you meant about it. Yeah, yeah. I think understanding the bigger picture of something is a need, the necessity is a must. I don't think that means you have to reinvent the wheel for everything that's being done. That's not. I don't think there's any value in that by any measure. But I think understanding where it all comes from gives you that bird's view or that zoomed out perspective of exactly what's going on and understanding how the world works is essential, Allahu Alam, in order for us to be able to appreciate what we have and appreciate what it is that we could lose. You can't appreciate what you have if you don't understand how easily it could be taken away and where exactly it's coming from. I think a lot of us, like when it comes, for example, climate change, we talk about climate change. One of the reasons climate change doesn't make it to the surface of this world or the societies and communities is because most people don't understand exactly how it's going. We don't have the clarity of how it's going to affect us. Yes, so the ice caps melt. So what? So they melt. The water goes up. So what? We don't, like, it's not clear to people. Yeah, so it's a bit hotter here. Great. If you're living in Canada, you're like, this is awesome. May it be a little bit hotter by a degree or two. So there's lack of clarity of how this, scientists who understand how it all works, how the ecosystem function, understand that this is going to cause loss of diversity. When there's loss of biodiversity, then the world actually slowly collapses. I mean, you'll go to the store to buy your things that you need to eat, and you won't find them there anymore. Or they'll be so expensive that basically you're working all month just to be able to buy the stuff that you need to eat, and there'll be millions of people around the world who don't have access to that, and they'll perish and die. I don't think there's that clarity. So we don't have to maybe fix every aspect of it, but that has to be clear, that this is what we're talking about. This is where this is going if we don't, and that goes for almost everything. When we talk about the social contract, it's just really understanding, okay, why is it that how does this work? When you think about, you're just used to following the law, being scared of the police, and not wanting to go to jail. That's a very simplistic way of understanding how countries function, how the world works. No, we have to have a better understanding of it than that. And if we did, by the way, we would advocate better too. We'd be way better advocates for ourselves and for our brothers and sisters who are struggling. Let's recite this last ayah, and it's not that complicated, so I have enough time to recite. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا أنصار الله كما قال عيسى ابن مريم للحواريين من أنصاري إلى الله قال الحواريون نحن أنصار الله فآمنت طائفة من بني إسرائيل وكفرت طائفة فأيدنا الذين آمنوا على عدوهم فأصبحوا ظاهرين. So the end of this surah, after he gives us that contract, after he explains the pillars of what a social contract looks like in our deen, and he gives us the deal, subhanahu wa ta'ala, he ends it with this story. He says, "O those who believe, Ya ladina amanu, kunu ansar Allah." He's trying to explain to us what this is going to look like, because sometimes there's a lot of details can be confusing. You need sometimes one word is just easier. So he's telling us, subhanahu wa ta'ala, what you need to do is be ansar Allah, be the nasir or nasir is the helper, the aider, the supporter, the one who stands by something, right? Which is why the Prophet ﷺ uses the terms of al-muhajirin, the people who immigrated, and the ansar. The ansar are the ones who supported them, stood by them, aided them, helped them. That's the word nasara. Now the same word is nasrun min Allah just a moment ago, which is success or victory. And we use that term quite commonly in Arabic language and in the Quran. Al-ansar Allah is a very interesting term. Stand by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Support. Now how do you do that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires nothing from you? If he needs nothing of you, then how exactly does that pan out into anything? So what it translates into is supporting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan for people. What is it that he hopes for people? What he wants for people? What does he want for humanity? What does he want for Muslims? What does he want for us as communities, as individuals? So whatever it is that he wants subhanahu wa ta'ala for us, when he's saying ansar Allah, meaning you're a supporter of that. You're a supporter of that outcome. You're a supporter of the outcome. It's as if he's saying, subhanahu wa ta'ala, if everything I was telling you at the beginning in terms of the laws to follow and the contract is confusing, just support the outcome then. We'll work backwards for you. Instead of doing something to arrive there, just here's the outcome. The outcome is that there is prosperity. that there is equality, that there is equity, that people are treated well, that people are able to take care of themselves, that there is khair, that there is da'wah, which is the outcome that we all hope for. We all understand what the outcome is, even though we may not for sure know how to get there. So we explained how to get there, subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you can't seem to figure that out, at least support the outcome. Support that it's going to look like that at the end. Because that's just as good, or you'll figure out how to get there if you don't understand the exact details. So that's how do you understand that? So he said, كما قال عيسى بن مريم, just like Isa bin Maryam, son of Mary, just like Jesus, told الحواريين, the apostles, is that the word? What's the word? What's the حواريون? Disciples, is it apostles? I can't remember them. Disciples, apostles, whatever. The people who stood by Isa alayhi salam, those who actually knew what it is that happened and knew what he actually taught alayhi salatu wasalam. It's important to know that Isa alayhi salam, the people, his disciples or his apostles who carried his message initially, they carried it with genuine. They carried it with sincerity. And they were people of God. They were men who actually did the best they could in terms of da'wah. It was only a number of centuries later that Christianity was politicized and it was brought into politics, and then of course it was changed because Injil itself was not fully preserved in its original form. So it was the recollection of the apostles, rahimahumullah jami'an, what they could remember, and of course their recollection of it differed from one of them to the other. So it was a lot of so we don't have the actual Injil the way it is. We have many versions that differ in a lot of details and a lot of broad stroke issues. Like the main concepts amongst them will differ. If it was just details, we would have been fine. It's actually main concepts that actually differ amongst them. Regardless of all that, Isa bin Maryam told the Hawariyin, "Kunu man ansari ila Allah." Who are those who are going to support me? Ila Allah, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to get the outcome. So if you have the outcome, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, please, man ansari ila Allah, who will stand by me? قال الحواريون نحن أنصار الله. So the apostle told him, we will be the supporters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's outcome, whatever his plan is subhanahu wa ta'ala. فآمنت طائفة من بني إسرائيل وكفرت طائفة. And then a group of Banu Israel believed in what Jesus brought them, and they supported. وكفرت طائفة, and another group refused. فأيدنا الذين آمنوا على عدوهم فأصبحوا ظاهرين. So we strengthened those who believed over those who chose to be their enemies, and they became the prevalent. ظاهرين mean they prevailed. They became more in numbers and more in their impact. And we know that as a fact, meaning the number of people who followed Isa alayhi salam versus Banu Israel who refused to, meaning it requires a little bit of explanation here because it's a little bit. So Banu Israel followed Musa alayhi salam. That was the last prophet that came to them with a law. With a book and a law was Musa alayhi salam, with the Torah and the commandments. So they had all that. Isa alayhi salam was from Bani Israel, and he was sent to Bani Israel. He was not sent to all of humanity. He was sent to Bani Israel. So he came to them with a law that was a little bit different than the law of Musa alayhi salam. And Banu Israel refused. Meaning Isa alayhi salam came to his people with a modified social contract to the one that they had from Musa alayhi salam, and they said no. And they refused it, which caused the rift within their nation, which caused the breakthrough. What ended up happening is they didn't hold on to the old one, and they ended up losing the new one. What happened to Bani Israel is when Isa alayhi salam, Masih, brought them the new social contract, here's the modification, here's the modified conditions that you require. And they said no, so they lost their adherence to the initial one, and then the second one that was given to them got lost as well. So they ended up with nothing. They ended up with nothing that is functional anymore, which is why the struggle exists. And this is why this ayah is here in Surat AlSaff. Is that when you're offered that, you need to take, which is why we as Muslims have to take what we have very carefully, because there is no sequel. There's no sequel. This is it. This is the contract. There's nothing else. No other prophet will come later and offer us a modified version that will allow us to function better. Because when Israel were found it difficult to adhere to the teachings of Musa alayhi salam, because those teachings were not designed to be eternal for them. They were designed to be circumstantial for a certain period of time. That's why he would come and say, what did Isa alayhi salam come and say? وَلِأُحِلَّ لَكُمْ بَعْضَ الَّذِي حُرِّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ. I came here to make halal for you. Some of the things that were made haram upon you. I'm here to actually offer you some modifications because you have difficulties. So they said no. They ended up not being able to adhere to the original social contract, and they lost the other one. The Injil got lost, and they ended up with nothing. Which is why, for us, this is a warning. Kunu ansar Allah. Stand by what Allah teaches, or else because there's no sequel to this. This won't be modified. If you don't do this right the first time, then you don't do it right ever. And I always thought that was a very powerful understanding. We'll end with that, inshallah.